CLEP History Most Tested Topics. Question 1. Which answer best matches this CLEP History Most Tested Topics clue? Rome's first emperor created the Principate and launched the Pax Romana? Option A. Liberalism. Option B. Henry VIII. Option C. Augustus. Option D. Greek polis. The correct answer is option C. Augustus. This points to Augustus because his rule began the Roman Empire's long period of stability. Liberalism points instead to political ideology emphasized rights, constitutionalism, and limited government. Henry VIII points instead to the English king broke with Rome and created the Church of England, and Greek polis points instead to city-minus states such as Athens and Sparta shaped Greek political life. Question 2. How would a CLEP history question most likely test this clue? A destructive European war mixed religious and political conflict? Option A. 30 Years' War. Option B. Alien and Sedition Acts. Option C. European Coal and Steel Community. Option D. Berlin Conference. The correct answer is option A. 30 Years' War. This points to 30 Years' War because the war devastated Central Europe and ended with the Peace of Westphalia. Alien and Sedition Acts points instead to Federalists' restricted criticism and immigration during conflict with France. European Coal and Steel Community points instead to Western European states' pooled coal and steel production after World War II, and Berlin Conference points instead to European powers set rules for colonizing Africa without African representation. Question 3. Why does this clue matter for CLEP History Most Tested Topics? Thinkers used observation and mathematics to challenge older views of nature. Option A. Federal Reserve Act. Option B. Sputnik. Option C. Great Awakening. Option D. Scientific Revolution. The correct answer is option D. Scientific Revolution. This points to scientific revolution because the movement transformed European science. Federal Reserve Act points instead to Congress created a central banking system to stabilize money and credit. Sputnik points instead to the Soviet satellite launch intensified Cold War competition in science and education, and Great Awakening points instead to religious revival stressed personal conversion and challenged established authority. Question 4. When reviewing CLEP History Most Tested Topics, which answer fits this clue? The English king broke with Rome and created the Church of England? Option A. Black Death. Option B. Hebrew monotheism. Option C. Henry VIII. Option D. Monroe Doctrine. The correct answer is option C. Henry VIII. This points to Henry VIII because the break began the English Reformation. Black Death points instead to plague killed millions and disrupted Europe's economy and society. Hebrew monotheism points instead to belief in one God distinguished ancient Hebrew religion, and Monroe Doctrine points instead to the United States warned European powers against new colonization in the Americas. Question 5. Where does this clue point in CLEP history content? Historians compare sources to test reliability and build evidence. Option A. Corroboration. Option B. Copernicus. Option C. Berlin Conference. Option D. European Coal and Steel Community. The correct answer is option A. Corroboration. This points to corroboration because corroboration helps avoid relying on one source alone. Copernicus points instead to a heliocentric model placed the Sun at the center of the solar system. Berlin Conference points instead to European powers set rules for colonizing Africa without African representation, and European Coal and Steel Community points instead to Western European states' pooled coal and steel production after World War II. Question 6. Identify the answer connected to this CLEP History Most Tested Topics clue. A Paris crowd attacked a royal prison in 1789? Option A. Storming of the Bastille. Option B. Emancipation Proclamation. Option C. Articles of Confederation. Option D. Korean War. The correct answer is option A. Storming of the Bastille. This points to storming of the Bastille because the event became a symbol of revolutionary action. Emancipation Proclamation points instead to Lincoln declared enslaved people free in areas still rebelling against the Union. Articles of Confederation points instead to the first national government had a weak central authority and no power to tax directly, and Korean War points instead to a Cold War conflict began when North Korea invaded South Korea. Question 7. Choose the term that completes this history clue. A monk challenged indulgences and helped launch the Protestant Reformation? Option A. 30 Years' War. Option B. Enlightenment. Option C. Peace of Augsburg. Option D, Martin Luther. The correct answer is option D, Martin Luther. This points to Martin Luther because his criticisms questioned Catholic authority and doctrine. 30 Years' War points instead to a destructive European war, mixed religious and political conflict. Enlightenment points instead to thinkers emphasized reason, natural rights, and criticism of tradition. And Peace of Augsburg points instead to German rulers could choose Lutheranism or Catholicism for their territories. Question 8. Select the best match for this CLEP-style clue. Lyndon Johnson's programs targeted poverty, education, healthcare, and civil rights. Option A, Great Society. Option B, Aristotle. Option C, Peloponnesian War. Option D, Lenin. The correct answer is option A, Great Society. This points to Great Society because the initiative expanded the welfare state and federal reform efforts. Aristotle points instead to a philosopher emphasized observation, logic, and classification. Peloponnesian War points instead to Athens and Sparta fought a long war that weakened Greek city-states. And Lenin points instead to the Bolshevik leader promoted vanguard revolution and withdrew Russia from World War I. Question 9. Determine which answer explains the CLEP history most tested topics. Clue: a Roman general's dictatorship helped end the Republic. Option A, NATO. Option B, Great Depression. Option C, Julius Caesar. Option D, Justinian Code. The correct answer is option C, Julius Caesar. This points to Julius Caesar because his rise exposed the Republic's political crisis. NATO points instead to a military alliance linked the United States with Western Europe. Great Depression points instead to a severe economic collapse caused mass unemployment and banking failures. And Justinian Code points instead to Byzantine legal reform organized Roman law. Question 10. Recognize the event or idea behind this clue. The Supreme Court declared segregated public schools unconstitutional. Option A, Homestead Act. Option B, Brown v. Board of Education. Option C, Red Scare. Option D, Fall of the Berlin Wall. The correct answer is option B, Brown v. Board of Education. This points to Brown v. Board of Education because the decision challenged the legal foundation of Jim Crow segregation. Homestead Act points instead to settlers received Western land after meeting residency and improvement requirements. Red Scare points instead to fear of radicals, and communism led to raids and restrictions after World War I. And Fall of the Berlin Wall points instead to East Germans opened the barrier dividing Berlin in 1989. Question 11. Pinpoint the best answer for this history clue. African American writers, artists, and musicians flourished in the 1920s. Option A, Harlem Renaissance. Option B, Whiskey Rebellion. Option C, Townsend Acts. Option D, Trail of Tears. The correct answer is option A, Harlem Renaissance. This points to Harlem Renaissance because the movement celebrated black culture and creativity. Whiskey Rebellion points instead to Washington used federal power to enforce an excise tax. Townsend Acts points instead to Parliament taxed imports such as glass, paper, and tea. And Trail of Tears points instead to Cherokee removal led to deadly forced migration westward. Question 12. Spot the answer that matches this exam clue. Japan's attack brought the United States into World War II. Option A, Watergate. Option B, Liberalism. Option C, Japanese-American internment. Option D, Pearl Harbor. The correct answer is option D, Pearl Harbor. This points to Pearl Harbor because the attack ended U.S. neutrality in the war. Watergate points instead to a political scandal led to President Nixon's resignation. Liberalism points instead to political ideology emphasized rights, constitutionalism, and limited government. And Japanese-American internment points instead to the U.S. government forcibly relocated Japanese Americans during World War II. Question 13. Compare the options and choose the one tied to this clue. The disputed 1876 election ended with federal troops leaving the South. Option A, Socialism. Option B, Byzantine Empire. Option C, Compromise of 1877. Option D, Montgomery bus boycott. The correct answer is option C, Compromise of 1877. This points to Compromise of 1877 because the compromise marked the end of Reconstruction. Socialism points instead to critics of capitalism called for social ownership or stronger protections for workers. Byzantine Empire points instead to the Eastern Roman Empire preserved Roman law and Greek culture, and Montgomery bus boycott points instead to African Americans protested segregated buses after Rosa Parks' arrest. Question 14. Connect this CLEP history most tested topics clue to the right answer. Popular sovereignty reopened the slavery question in Western territories. Option A, Kansas-Nebraska Act. Option B, Magna Carta. Option C, Ancient Egypt. Option D, Roe v. Wade. The correct answer is option A, Kansas-Nebraska Act. This points to Kansas-Nebraska Act because the act undermined the Missouri Compromise and fueled violence in Kansas. Magna Carta points instead to English nobles' forced limits on royal power in 1215. Ancient Egypt points instead to pharaohs, the Nile, and monumental architecture shaped a long-lasting civilization. And Roe v. Wade points instead to the Supreme Court recognized a constitutional right to abortion in 1973. Question 15. Trace this clue to the correct historical topic. Landholding and personal loyalty structured medieval power. Option A, Northern Renaissance. Option B, Civil Rights Act of 1964. Option C, feudalism. Option D, 15th Amendment. The correct answer is option C, feudalism. This points to feudalism because the system organized political and military obligations. Northern Renaissance points instead to reform-minded humanism spread in Northern Europe. Civil Rights Act of 1964 points instead to Congress outlawed segregation in public accommodations and employment discrimination. And 15th Amendment points instead to voting rights could not be denied based on race, color, or previous servitude. Question 16. Explain which answer fits this CLEP history clue. Congress balanced free and slave states while drawing a slavery line in the Louisiana Territory. Option A, John Locke. Option B, Missouri Compromise. Option C, Hebrew monotheism. Option D, Embargo Act. The correct answer is option B, Missouri Compromise. This points to Missouri Compromise because the compromise temporarily managed sectional conflict over slavery. John Locke points instead to a philosopher argued for natural rights and government by consent. Hebrew monotheism points instead to belief in one God distinguished ancient Hebrew religion, and Embargo Act points instead to Jefferson restricted foreign trade to pressure Britain and France. Question 17. Interpret this clue and choose the best answer. Journalists exposed corporate abuse, corruption, and urban problems. Option A, Stonewall Uprising. Option B, Baby Boom. Option C, Muckrakers. Option D, Diocletian. The correct answer is option C, Muckrakers. This points to muckrakers because their reporting helped build support for progressive reforms. Stonewall Uprising points instead to resistance to a police raid helped energize the LGBTQ rights movement. Baby Boom points instead to birth rates rose after World War II, and Diocletian points instead to a Roman emperor divided administration to manage imperial crisis. Question 18. Analyze this history clue and find the match. A heliocentric model placed the Sun at the center of the solar system. Option A, Lend-Lease. Option B, Second Great Awakening. Option C, Copernicus. Option D, Holocaust. The correct answer is option C, Copernicus. This points to Copernicus because his theory challenged geocentric astronomy. Lend-Lease points instead to the United States supplied allies before entering World War II. Second Great Awakening points instead to revivalism-inspired reform movements, such as abolition and temperance, and Holocaust points instead to Nazi Germany murdered 6 million Jews and millions of other victims. Question 19. Recall in CLEP history most tested topics. Which answer fits this clue? Rail lines connected the country and accelerated Western settlement and commerce. Option A, Transcontinental Railroad. Option B, Stonewall Uprising. Option C, Federalist Papers. Option D, Roman Republic. The correct answer is option A, Transcontinental Railroad. This points to Transcontinental Railroad because the railroad transformed travel, trade, and the Western economy. Stonewall Uprising points instead to resistance to a police raid helped energize the LGBTQ rights movement. Federalist Papers points instead to essays defended ratification of the Constitution and explained federal power, and Roman Republic points instead to Rome used elected offices, a senate, and checks among elites. Question 20. Name the event, idea, or policy described here. Britain loosely enforced colonial rules before tightening control after 1763. Option A, monorealism. Option B, source bias. Option C, Newton. Option D, salutary neglect. The correct answer is option D, salutary neglect. This points to salutary neglect because loose enforcement helped colonists develop habits of self-government. Monorealism points instead to peasants' worked estates that formed the economic base of medieval society. Source bias points instead to evidence may be shaped by an author's motives or assumptions, and Newton points instead to laws of motion and gravity unified celestial and earthly physics. Question 21. Match the CLEP history most tested topics clue with the correct answer. The peace settlement punished Germany and created the League of Nations. Option A, liberalism. Option B, Treaty of Versailles. Option C, 13th Amendment. Option D, Mayflower Compact. The correct answer is option B, Treaty of Versailles. This points to Treaty of Versailles because the treaty shaped post-war tensions despite U.S. refusal to join the League. Liberalism points instead to political ideology emphasized rights, constitutionalism, and limited government. 13th Amendment points instead to slavery was abolished throughout the United States, and Mayflower Compact points instead to Pilgrims agreed to self-government before settling at Plymouth. Question 22. Distinguish the correct answer from similar history topics. Britain and France made concessions to Hitler hoping to avoid war. Option A, corroboration. Option B, conservatism. Option C, estates general. Option D, appeasement. The correct answer is option D, appeasement. This points to appeasement because the policy failed to stop Nazi expansion. Corroboration points instead to historians compare sources to test reliability and build evidence. Conservatism points instead to post-Napoleonic politics defended tradition, monarchy, and social order, and estates-general points instead to a French representative body met in 1789 during a fiscal crisis. Question 23. Locate the correct choice for this CLEP clue. A canal connected the Great Lakes to the Hudson River and lowered transportation costs. Option A, storming of the Bastille. Option B, Spanish Armada. Option C, Crusades. Option D, Erie Canal. The correct answer is option D, Erie Canal. This points to Erie Canal because it helped link Western farms to Eastern markets. Storming of the Bastille points instead to a Paris crowd attacked a royal prison in 1789. Spanish Armada points instead to Spain's failed invasion of England weakened Spanish prestige, and Crusades points instead to European Christians launched military campaigns toward the Eastern Mediterranean. Question 24. Review this clue and select the best answer. Frontier unrest in Virginia exposed tensions over land, class, and colonial leadership. Option A, Marbury v. Madison. Option B, Bacon's Rebellion. Option C, Secession. Option D, French Revolution. The correct answer is option B, Bacon's Rebellion. This points to Bacon's Rebellion because the rebellion revealed conflict inside colonial society. Marbury v. Madison points instead to the Supreme Court established judicial review. Secession points instead to Southern states left the Union after Lincoln's election, and French Revolution points instead to old regime inequality and fiscal crisis helped spark radical political change. Question 25. Decide which option this CLEP history clue describes. Schools developed around theology, law, medicine, and scholastic debate. Option A, McCarthyism. Option B, periodization. Option C, Korean War. Option D, medieval universities. The correct answer is option D, medieval universities. This points to medieval universities because universities became centers of learning in medieval Europe. McCarthyism points instead to accusations of communist influence damaged careers during the Second Red Scare. Periodization points instead to history is divided into meaningful eras based on patterns and turning points, and Korean War points instead to a Cold War conflict began when North Korea invaded South Korea. Question 26. Evaluate the options and choose the one that fits. The 1970s saw high inflation combined with slow growth. Option A, stagflation. Option B, Marshall Plan in Europe. Option C, Socrates. Option D, Peace of Augsburg. The correct answer is option A, stagflation. This points to stagflation because the problem challenged Keynesian policy assumptions. Marshall Plan in Europe points instead to US aid rebuilt Western Europe and strengthened anti-communist governments. Socrates points instead to a philosopher questioned assumptions and emphasized ethical inquiry, and Peace of Augsburg points instead to German rulers could choose Lutheranism or Catholicism for their territories. Question 27. Consider this clue and identify the historical match. Enslaved people were counted partially for representation and taxation. Option A, 3-5 compromise. Option B, Marshall Plan in Europe. Option C, Homeric epics. Option D, conservatism. The correct answer is option A, 3-5 compromise. This points to 3-5 compromise because the compromise showed slavery's influence on constitutional politics. Marshall Plan in Europe points instead to US aid rebuilt Western Europe and strengthened anti-communist governments. Homeric epics points instead to Greek poems such as the Iliad and Odyssey preserved heroic ideals, and conservatism points instead to post-Napoleonic politics defended tradition, monarchy, and social order. Question 28. Predict the answer. A CLEP item is targeting Atlantic trade linked Europe, Africa, and the Americas through goods and enslaved labor. Option A, Great Society. Option B, Triangular Trade. Option C, Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. Option D, Embargo Act. The correct answer is option B, Triangular Trade. This points to triangular trade because the system shows the economic connections of the colonial Atlantic world. Great Society points instead to Lyndon Johnson's programs targeted poverty, education, healthcare, and civil rights. Triangle Shirtwaist Fire points instead to a deadly factory fire strengthened demands for workplace safety laws, and Embargo Act points instead to Jefferson restricted foreign trade to pressure Britain and France. Question 29. Notice the key clue and choose the matching answer. Clep promoted tariffs, a national bank, and internal improvements. Option A, Spanish Armada. Option B, monorealism. Option C, Crimean War. Option D, American system. The correct answer is option D, American system. This points to American system because the plan aimed to strengthen national economic development. Spanish Armada points instead to Spain's failed invasion of England weakened Spanish prestige. Monorealism points instead to peasants' worked estates that formed the economic base of medieval society, and Crimean War points instead to a mid-19th century war exposed Russian weakness and shifted European diplomacy. Question 30. Estimate which topic this clue would test. Rome defeated Carthage and gained dominance in the Western Mediterranean. Option A, Dreyfus Affair. Option B, Martin Luther. Option C, Punic Wars. Option D, Brown v. Board of Education. The correct answer is option C, Punic Wars. This points to Punic Wars because the wars helped transform Rome into a major empire. Dreyfus Affair points instead to a French scandal over antisemitism and military injustice divided society. Martin Luther points instead to a monk-challenged indulgences and helped launch the Protestant Reformation, and Brown v. Board of Education points instead to the Supreme Court declared segregated public schools unconstitutional. Question 31. Judge and CLEP history most tested topics. Which answer fits this clue? Piedmont, Garibaldi, and nationalist politics helped create Italy. Option A, Truman Doctrine. Option B, Agricultural Revolution. Option C, Great Compromise. Option D, Italian Unification. The correct answer is option D, Italian Unification. This points to Italian unification because unification changed the European balance of power. Truman Doctrine points instead to the United States promised aid to resist communist expansion. Agricultural Revolution points instead to improved farming, increased food production before industrialization, and Great Compromise points instead to the Constitution created a bicameral Congress balancing large and small states. Question 32. Assess in CLEP history most tested topics. Which answer fits this clue? Colonists protested the Tea Act by destroying tea in Boston Harbor. Option A, Boston Tea Party. Option B, Roman Republic. Option C, Galileo. Option D, Muckrakers. The correct answer is option A, Boston Tea Party. This points to Boston Tea Party because the protest led Britain to impose tougher measures on Massachusetts. Roman Republic points instead to Rome used elected offices, a senate, and checks among elites. Galileo points instead to observations with a telescope supported heliocentrism and challenged church-backed views, and Muckrakers points instead to journalists, exposed corporate abuse, corruption, and urban problems. Question 33. Classify this clue under the right historical answer. A historical argument states a defensible claim about evidence. Option A, McCarthyism. Option B, thesis statement. Option C, conservatism. Option D, new imperialism. The correct answer is option B, thesis statement. This points to thesis statement because a thesis guides interpretation rather than merely listing facts. McCarthyism points instead to accusations of communist influence damaged careers during the Second Red Scare. Conservatism points instead to post-Napoleonic politics defended tradition, monarchy, and social order. And new imperialism points instead to European states' expanded control over Africa and Asia in the late 19th century. Question 34. Infer the answer from this short CLEP clue. Settlers received Western land after meeting residency and improvement requirements. Option A, Homestead Act. Option B, Missouri Compromise. Option C, Point of View. Option D, Pearl Harbor. The correct answer is option A, Homestead Act. This points to Homestead Act because the act encouraged migration to the Great Plains. Missouri Compromise points instead to Congress balanced free and slave states while drawing a slavery line in the Louisiana Territory. Point of View points instead to a source reflects the author's position, interests, and audience, and Pearl Harbor points instead to Japan's attack brought the United States into World War II. Question 35. Link this clue to the correct exam topic. Tax cuts, deregulation, and supply-side ideas shaped 1980s economic policy. Option A, Dust Bowl. Option B, Fall of Western Rome. Option C, Reaganomics. Option D, Bacon's Rebellion. The correct answer is option C, Reaganomics. This points to Reaganomics because the approach emphasized markets and reduced government intervention. Dust Bowl points instead to drought and soil erosion devastated Great Plains farmers during the Depression. Fall of Western Rome points instead to political weakness, invasions, and economic strain ended imperial rule in the West, and Bacon's Rebellion points instead to frontier unrest in Virginia exposed tensions over land, class, and colonial leadership. Question 36. Uncover the answer behind this history clue. A philosopher wrote dialogues and imagined rule by philosopher minus kings. Option A, Missouri Compromise. Option B, Plato. Option C, Watergate. Option D, Petrarch. The correct answer is option B, Plato. This points to Plato because his works shaped idealist philosophy and political thought. Missouri Compromise points instead to Congress balanced free and slave states while drawing a slavery line in the Louisiana Territory. Watergate points instead to a political scandal led to President Nixon's resignation, and Petrarch points instead to a Renaissance writer helped revive classical Latin texts and humanism. Question 37. Test your recall by choosing the answer for this clue. The Roman Empire experienced relative peace and prosperity. Option A, Pax Romana. Option B, Baby Boom. Option C, Compromise of 1850. Option D, Constitutional Convention. The correct answer is option A, Pax Romana. This points to Pax Romana because this period helped trade and imperial culture flourish. Baby boom points instead to birth rates rose after World War II. Compromise of 1850 points instead to Congress admitted California as free and strengthened the Fugitive Slave Act, and Constitutional Convention points instead to delegates created a stronger federal government with checks and balances. Question 38. Practice this CLEP-style match. Byzantine disputes over religious images divided church and empire. Option A, Iconoclasm. Option B, Freedmen's Bureau. Option C, Hebrew monotheism. Option D, Transcontinental Railroad. The correct answer is option A, Iconoclasm. This points to iconoclasm because the controversy shows tensions over worship and authority. Freedmen's Bureau points instead to a federal agency assisted formerly enslaved people after the Civil War. Hebrew monotheism points instead to belief in one God distinguished ancient Hebrew religion, and Transcontinental Railroad points instead to rail lines connected the country and accelerated Western settlement and commerce. Question 39. Challenge yourself to identify this history clue. Plague killed millions and disrupted Europe's economy and society. Option A, Black Death. Option B, Plato. Option C, Prohibition. Option D, Great Compromise. The correct answer is option A, Black Death. This points to Black Death because the pandemic weakened labor systems and changed social relations. Plato points instead to a philosopher wrote dialogues and imagined rule by philosopher minus kings. Prohibition points instead to the 18th Amendment banned the manufacture and sale of alcohol, and Great Compromise points instead to the Constitution created a bicameral Congress balancing large and small states. Question 40. Confirm the correct answer for this clue. Entangling alliances turned a regional crisis into a wider war. Option A, World War I alliances. Option B, Bacon's Rebellion. Option C, Great Depression. Option D, NATO. The correct answer is option A, World War I alliances. This points to World War I alliances because alliance systems helped escalate conflict in 1914. Bacon's Rebellion points instead to frontier unrest in Virginia exposed tensions over land, class, and colonial leadership. Great Depression points instead to a severe economic collapse caused mass unemployment and banking failures, and NATO points instead to a military alliance linked the United States with Western Europe. Question 41. Verify which option matches this CLEP history clue. Slavery was abolished throughout the United States. Option A, Peloponnesian War. Option B, thesis statement. Option C, economic interpretation. Option D, 13th Amendment. The correct answer is option D, 13th Amendment. This points to 13th Amendment because the amendment legally ended slavery after the Civil War. Peloponnesian War points instead to Athens and Sparta fought a long war that weakened Greek city-states. Thesis statement points instead to a historical argument states a defensible claim about evidence, and economic interpretation points instead to historical change is explained through production, trade, labor, and wealth. Question 42. Solve this quick history clue. Washington used federal power to enforce an excise tax. Option A, Whiskey Rebellion. Option B, Berlin Conference. Option C, D-Day. Option D, Japanese-American internment. The correct answer is option A, Whiskey Rebellion. This points to Whiskey Rebellion because the episode demonstrated the strength of the new government. Berlin Conference points instead to European powers set rules for colonizing Africa without African representation. D-Day points instead to Allied forces landed in Normandy to begin liberating Western Europe, and Japanese-American internment points instead to the US government forcibly relocated Japanese Americans during World War II. Question 43. Figure out the correct answer from this clue. Critics of capitalism called for social ownership or stronger protections for workers. Option A, Jacksonian democracy. Option B, Saratoga. Option C, Shays Rebellion. Option D, socialism. The correct answer is option D, socialism. This points to socialism because socialist ideas responded to industrial inequality. Jacksonian democracy points instead to politics expanded white male suffrage and celebrated the common man. Saratoga points instead to an American victory persuaded France to ally with the United States, and Shays Rebellion points instead to farmers' unrest exposed weaknesses in the Articles of Confederation. Question 44. Find in CLEP history most tested topics. Which answer fits this clue? European leaders allowed Hitler to take the Sudetenland in 1938. Option A, McCarthyism. Option B, appeasement. Option C, manifest destiny. Option D, Munich Conference. The correct answer is option D, Munich Conference. This points to Munich Conference because the agreement became a symbol of failed appeasement. McCarthyism points instead to accusations of communist influence damaged careers during the Second Red Scare. Appeasement points instead to Britain and France made concessions to Hitler hoping to avoid war, and manifest destiny points instead to many Americans believed the nation was destined to expand westward. Question 45. Remember which topic connects to this clue. A French scandal over antisemitism and military injustice divided society. Option A, Harriet Beecher Stowe. Option B, Berlin Conference. Option C, Bill of Rights. Option D, Dreyfus Affair. The correct answer is option D, Dreyfus Affair. This points to Dreyfus Affair because the affair revealed tensions in the Third Republic. Harriet Beecher Stowe points instead to her novel Uncle Tom's Cabin increased Northern anti-slavery feeling. Berlin Conference points instead to European powers set rules for colonizing Africa without African representation, and Bill of Rights points instead to the first 10 amendments protected individual liberties against federal abuse. Question 46. Highlight the answer described by this clue. Politics expanded white male suffrage and celebrated the common man. Option A, sharecropping. Option B, scholasticism. Option C, Jacksonian democracy. Option D, French Revolution. The correct answer is option C, Jacksonian democracy. This points to Jacksonian democracy because the era broadened participation for many white men while excluding women and most black Americans. Sharecropping points instead to free people and poor whites farmed land for a share of the crop. Scholasticism points instead to medieval thinkers used reason to examine theology, and French Revolution points instead to old Minas regime inequality and fiscal crisis helped spark radical political change. Question 47. Separate in CLEP history most tested topics, which answer fits this clue? Senators became elected directly by voters? Option A, Civil Rights Act of 1964. Option B, Greek polis. Option C, 17th Amendment. Option D, stagflation. The correct answer is option C, 17th Amendment. This points to 17th Amendment because the amendment reflected progressive demands for more democracy. Civil Rights Act of 1964 points instead to Congress outlawed segregation in public accommodations and employment discrimination. Greek polis points instead to city-minus states such as Athens and Sparta shaped Greek political life, and stagflation points instead to the 1970s saw high inflation combined with slow growth. Question 48. Clarify which history topic this clue describes. A federal agency assisted formerly enslaved people after the Civil War. Option A, Freedmen's Bureau. Option B, Aristotle. Option C, Yalta Conference. Option D, Peace of Westphalia. The correct answer is option A, Freedmen's Bureau. This points to Freedmen's Bureau because it provided help with education, labor contracts, and basic needs. Aristotle points instead to a philosopher emphasized observation, logic, and classification. Yalta Conference points instead to Allied leaders discussed post-war Europe near the end of World War II, and Peace of Westphalia points instead to treaties helped establish state sovereignty after the 30 Years' War. Question 49. Relate this clue to the correct CLEP history answer. Spain's failed invasion of England weakened Spanish prestige? Option A, New Deal. Option B, World War I. Option C, Spanish Armada. Option D, Peace of Augsburg. The correct answer is option C, Spanish Armada. This points to Spanish Armada because the defeat boosted English confidence and naval reputation. New Deal points instead to Franklin Roosevelt's programs expanded federal relief, recovery, and reform. World War I points instead to U.S. entry helped the Allies and increased federal power at home, and Peace of Augsburg points instead to German rulers could choose Lutheranism or Catholicism for their territories. Question 50. Detect the answer hidden in this clue. A nuclear standoff brought the United States and Soviet Union close to war? Option A, Agricultural Revolution. Option B, Feudalism. Option C, Cuban Missile Crisis. Option D, Gettysburg. The correct answer is option C, Cuban Missile Crisis. This points to Cuban Missile Crisis because the crisis became a major Cold War confrontation. Agricultural Revolution points instead to improved farming, increased food production before industrialization. Feudalism points instead to land holding and personal loyalty structured medieval power, and Gettysburg points instead to a Union victory marked a major turning point in the Civil War. Question 51. Differentiate the matching answer from other periods. Italy's fascist leader built a dictatorship after World War I. Option A, Revolutions of 1848. Option B, Mussolini. Option C, Ancient Egypt. Option D, Primary source. The correct answer is option B, Mussolini. This points to Mussolini because his regime became an early model of fascist rule. Revolutions of 1848 points instead to liberals and nationalists challenged conservative governments across Europe. Ancient Egypt points instead to pharaohs, the Nile, and monumental architecture shaped a long-lasting civilization, and primary source points instead to a document or artifact comes from the time being studied. Question 52. Carefully choose which option matches this clue. Veterans received education and housing benefits after World War II. Option A, decolonization. Option B, GI Bill. Option C, Aristotle. Option D, Articles of Confederation. The correct answer is option B, GI Bill. This points to GI Bill because the law helped expand the middle class. Decolonization points instead to colonies in Asia and Africa gained independence after World War II. Aristotle points instead to a philosopher emphasized observation, logic, and classification, and Articles of Confederation points instead to the first national government had a weak central authority and no power to tax directly. Question 53. Question: which answer a CLEP item would expect? European integration created shared institutions and a common market. Option A, secession. Option B, Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. Option C, European Union. Option D, decolonization. The correct answer is option C, European Union. This points to European Union because the EU grew from post-war cooperation. Secession points instead to southern states left the Union after Lincoln's election. Triangle Shirtwaist Fire points instead to a deadly factory fire strengthened demands for workplace safety laws, and decolonization points instead to colonies in Asia and Africa gained independence after World War II. Question 54. Explore this clue and identify the correct answer. Reformers demanded the end of slavery through moral and political arguments. Option A, secession. Option B, Pearl Harbor. Option C, abolitionism. Option D, atomic bombings. The correct answer is option C, abolitionism. This points to abolitionism because the movement challenged slavery and intensified sectional conflict. Secession points instead to southern states left the Union after Lincoln's election. Pearl Harbor points instead to Japan's attack brought the United States into World War II, and atomic bombings points instead to the United States used nuclear weapons against Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Question 55. Revisit this history clue and choose its match. City minus states such as Athens and Sparta shaped Greek political life. Option A, Greek polis. Option B, Yorktown. Option C, Marshall Plan in Europe. Option D, stagflation. The correct answer is option A, Greek polis. This points to Greek polis because the polis was the central political unit of ancient Greece. Yorktown points instead to Cornwallis surrendered after American and French forces trapped him. Marshall Plan in Europe points instead to US aid rebuilt Western Europe and strengthened anti-communist governments, and stagflation points instead to the 1970s saw high inflation combined with slow growth. Question 56. Discover which answer this CLEP clue describes. A trial over teaching evolution highlighted conflict between modernism and fundamentalism. Option A, New Deal. Option B, 15th Amendment. Option C, Manifest Destiny. Option D, Scopes Trial. The correct answer is option D, Scopes Trial. This points to Scopes Trial because the case symbolized cultural tensions of the 1920s. New Deal points instead to Franklin Roosevelt's programs expanded federal relief, recovery, and reform. 15th Amendment points instead to voting rights could not be denied based on race, color, or previous servitude, and Manifest Destiny points instead to many Americans believed the nation was destined to expand westward. Question 57. Investigate the correct choice for this clue. An international organization was created after World War II to promote peace and cooperation. Option A, Civil Rights Act of 1964. Option B, Stonewall Uprising. Option C, Brown v. Board of Education. Option D, United Nations. The correct answer is option D, United Nations. This points to United Nations because the UN reflected hopes for collective security after global war. Civil Rights Act of 1964 points instead to Congress outlawed segregation in public accommodations and employment discrimination. Stonewall Uprising points instead to resistance to a police raid helped energize the LGBTQ rights movement. And Brown v. Board of Education points instead to the Supreme Court declared segregated public schools unconstitutional. Question 58. Read the clue and select the matching topic. Rome used elected offices, a senate, and checks among elites. Option A, Estates minus general. Option B, Roman Republic. Option C, French and Indian War. Option D, 19th Amendment. The correct answer is option B, Roman Republic. This points to Roman Republic because the Republic influenced later ideas of mixed government. Estates minus general points instead to a French representative body met in 1789 during a fiscal crisis. French and Indian War points instead to Britain gained territory but created debt that led to new colonial taxes. And 19th Amendment points instead to women gained constitutional protection for voting rights. Question 59. Complete the exam minus style clue with the correct answer. The United States supplied allies before entering World War II. Option A, lend minus lease. Option B, common sense. Option C, continuity and change. Option D, Freedmen's Bureau. The correct answer is option A, lend minus lease. This points to lend minus lease because the policy moved the nation away from strict neutrality. Common sense points instead to Thomas Paine argued in plain language for independence from Britain. Continuity and change points instead to analysis compares what stayed the same and what shifted over time. And Freedmen's Bureau points instead to a federal agency assisted formerly enslaved people after the Civil War. Question 60. Decode in CLEP history most tested topics. Which answer fits this clue? Laws of motion and gravity, unified celestial and earthly physics. Option A, Newton. Option B, secession. Option C, Louisiana Purchase. Option D, Harlem Renaissance. The correct answer is option A, Newton. This points to Newton because his work became a foundation of modern science. Secession points instead to Southern states left the Union after Lincoln's election. Louisiana Purchase points instead to Jefferson doubled the nation's territory through a purchase from France. And Harlem Renaissance points instead to African American writers, artists, and musicians flourished in the 1920s. Question 61. Rapidly identify the best answer for this clue. South Carolina claimed it could reject federal tariffs. Option A, Dreyfus Affair. Option B, Nullification Crisis. Option C, Constitutional Convention. Option D, Roman Republic. The correct answer is option B, Nullification Crisis. This points to Nullification Crisis because the crisis tested federal authority and states' rights. Dreyfus Affair points instead to a French scandal over antisemitism and military injustice divided society. Constitutional Convention points instead to delegates created a stronger federal government with checks and balances. And Roman Republic points instead to Rome used elected offices, a senate, and checks among elites. Question 62. Wisely choose which response matches this clue. Federal law attacked barriers such as literacy tests and voting. Option A, 14th Amendment. Option B, Indian Removal Act. Option C, Stamp Act. Option D, Voting Rights Act of 1965. The correct answer is option D, Voting Rights Act of 1965. This points to Voting Rights Act of 1965 because the act protected voting access, especially in the South. 14th Amendment points instead to citizenship and equal protection were written into the Constitution. Indian Removal Act points instead to federal policy forced many native peoples west of the Mississippi, and Stamp Act points instead to Parliament taxed printed materials and sparked colonial protests over representation. Question 63. Rank the choices by relevance and pick the best match. Farmers demanded reforms such as free silver, railroad regulation, and direct democracy. Option A, Populist movement. Option B, Hebrew monotheism. Option C, Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. Option D, Great Society. The correct answer is option A, Populist movement. This points to populist movement because the movement reflected rural anger over debt, prices, and corporate power. Hebrew monotheism points instead to belief in one God distinguished ancient Hebrew religion. Triangle Shirtwaist Fire points instead to a deadly factory fire strengthened demands for workplace safety laws. And Great Society points instead to Lyndon Johnson's programs targeted poverty, education, healthcare, and civil rights. Question 64. Prioritize in CLEP history most tested topics. Which answer fits this clue? Pharaohs, the Nile, and monumental architecture shaped a long-lasting civilization? Option A, Erie Canal. Option B, John Locke. Option C, Townsend Axe. Option D, Ancient Egypt. The correct answer is option D, Ancient Egypt. This points to ancient Egypt because Egypt's stability depended heavily on the Nile and centralized kingship. Erie Canal points instead to a canal connected the Great Lakes to the Hudson River and lowered transportation costs. John Locke points instead to a philosopher argued for natural rights and government by consent, and Townsend Acts points instead to Parliament taxed imports such as glass, paper and tea. Question 65. Focus on the clue and pick the correct option. Southern states left the Union after Lincoln's election. Option A, 3-5 compromise. Option B, Congress of Vienna. Option C, secession. Option D, French Revolution. The correct answer is option C, secession. This points to secession because secession led directly to the Civil War. 3-5 compromise points instead to enslaved people were counted partially for representation and taxation. Congress of Vienna points instead to European powers restored balance after Napoleon's defeat, and French Revolution points instead to old regime inequality and fiscal crisis helped spark radical political change. Question 66. Use this clue to identify the tested topic. Colonies supplied raw materials and markets for the mother country. Option A, Scopes Trial. Option B, Great Society. Option C, Compromise of 1850. Option D, Mercantilism. The correct answer is option D, Mercantilism. This points to mercantilism because the system treated colonies as sources of wealth for an imperial power. Scopes Trial points instead to a trial over teaching evolution highlighted conflict between modernism and fundamentalism. Great Society points instead to Lyndon Johnson's programs targeted poverty, education, healthcare, and civil rights, and Compromise of 1850 points instead to Congress admitted California as free and strengthened the Fugitive Slave Act. Question 67. Apply your CLEP history knowledge to this clue. Reformers targeted corruption, monopolies, unsafe workplaces, and social injustice. Option A, nationalism. Option B, John Brown's raid. Option C, Christianity. Option D, progressive era. The correct answer is option D, progressive era. This points to progressive era because the period expanded regulation and democratic reforms. Nationalism points instead to people emphasized shared language, culture, and political identity. John Brown's raid points instead to an abolitionist attack on Harper's Ferry frightened many Southerners, and Christianity points instead to a religion grew within the Roman world and later became dominant in Europe. Question 68. Between in CLEP history most tested topics, which answer fits this clue? The United States used nuclear weapons against Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Option A, thesis statement. Option B, Aristotle. Option C, atomic bombings. Option D, McCarthyism. The correct answer is option C, atomic bombings. This points to atomic bombings because the bombings helped end the Pacific War and began the nuclear age. Thesis statement points instead to a historical argument states a defensible claim about evidence. Aristotle points instead to a philosopher emphasized observation, logic, and classification, and McCarthyism points instead to accusations of communist influence damaged careers during the Second Red Scare. Question 69. Promptly in CLEP history most tested topics, which answer fits this clue? Jefferson doubled the nation's territory through a purchase from France? Option A, continuity and change. Option B, Scopes Trial. Option C, War of 1812. Option D, Louisiana Purchase. The correct answer is option D, Louisiana Purchase. This points to Louisiana Purchase because the purchase expanded Western settlement and raised constitutional questions. Continuity and change points instead to analysis compares what stayed the same and what shifted over time. Scopes Trial points instead to a trial over teaching evolution highlighted conflict between modernism and fundamentalism, and War of 1812 points instead to conflict with Britain strengthened American nationalism despite mixed military results. Question 70. Smartly in CLEP history most tested topics, which answer fits this clue? The young United States avoided taking sides in European wars? Option A, Washington's neutrality policy. Option B, nullification crisis. Option C, Dust Bowl. Option D, Whiskey Rebellion. The correct answer is option A, Washington's neutrality policy. This points to Washington's neutrality policy because this policy aimed to protect a fragile republic from foreign conflict. Nullification crisis points instead to South Carolina claimed it could reject federal tariffs. Dust Bowl points instead to drought and soil erosion devastated Great Plains farmers during the Depression, and Whiskey Rebellion points instead to Washington used federal power to enforce an excise tax. Question 71. Swiftly confirm the answer tied to this clue. Political ideology emphasized rights, constitutionalism, and limited government. Option A, liberalism. Option B, German unification. Option C, Second Great Awakening. Option D, Marbury v. Madison. The correct answer is option A, liberalism. This points to liberalism because liberalism challenged absolutism and traditional privilege. German unification points instead to Bismarck used diplomacy and war to unify Germany under Prussia. Second Great Awakening points instead to revivalism-inspired reform movements, such as abolition and temperance, and Marbury v. Madison points instead to the Supreme Court established judicial review. Question 72. Diligently review and choose the matching answer. Federalists restricted criticism and immigration during conflict with France. Option A, Copernicus. Option B, 13th Amendment. Option C, Alien and Sedition Acts. Option D, conservatism. The correct answer is option C, Alien and Sedition Acts. This points to Alien and Sedition Acts because these laws raised questions about free speech and federal power. Copernicus points instead to a heliocentric model placed the sun at the center of the solar system. 13th Amendment points instead to slavery was abolished throughout the United States, and conservatism points instead to post-Napoleonic politics defended tradition, monarchy, and social order. Question 73. Immediately decide which option. The clue describes the Supreme Court recognized a constitutional right to abortion in 1973. Option A, Punic Wars. Option B, Montesquieu. Option C, Truman Doctrine. Option D, Roe v. Wade. The correct answer is option D, Roe v. Wade. This points to Roe v. Wade because the case became central to debates over privacy and reproductive rights. Punic Wars points instead to Rome defeated Carthage and gained dominance in the Western Mediterranean. Montesquieu points instead to a philosopher advocated separation of powers, and Truman Doctrine points instead to the United States promised aid to resist communist expansion. Question 74. Narrow in CLEP history most tested topics. Which answer fits this clue? The Supreme Court established judicial review. Option A, Marshall Plan in Europe. Option B, Hitler. Option C, 13th Amendment. Option D, Marbury v. Madison. The correct answer is option D, Marbury v. Madison. This points to Marbury v. Madison because the case confirmed the court's power to declare laws unconstitutional. Marshall Plan in Europe points instead to U.S. aid rebuilt Western Europe and strengthened anti-communist governments. Hitler points instead to Nazi leadership promoted dictatorship, expansionism, and racial ideology, and 13th Amendment points instead to slavery was abolished throughout the United States. Question 75. Eliminate distractors and choose the matching answer. Congress created a central banking system to stabilize money and credit. Option A, Federal Reserve Act. Option B, Martin Luther. Option C, Homestead Act. Option D, 19th Amendment. The correct answer is option A, Federal Reserve Act. This points to Federal Reserve Act because the act reshaped U.S. banking and monetary policy. Martin Luther points instead to a monk-challenged indulgences and helped launch the Protestant Reformation. Homestead Act points instead to settlers received Western land after meeting residency and improvement requirements, and 19th Amendment points instead to women gained constitutional protection for voting rights. Question 76. Again, which option fits after reading the CLEP-style clue? Cornwallis surrendered after American and French forces trapped him. Option A, War of 1812. Option B, Socrates. Option C, European Coal and Steel Community. Option D, Yorktown. The correct answer is option D, Yorktown. This points to Yorktown because the victory effectively ended major fighting in the Revolution. War of 1812 points instead to conflict with Britain strengthened American nationalism despite mixed military results. Socrates points instead to a philosopher questioned assumptions and emphasized ethical inquiry, and European Coal and Steel Community points instead to Western European states' pooled coal and steel production after World War II. Question 77. Think through this clue and identify the answer. Jefferson restricted foreign trade to pressure Britain and France. Option A, medieval universities. Option B, Embargo Act. Option C, Constitutional Convention. Option D, iconoclasm. The correct answer is option B, Embargo Act. This points to Embargo Act because the policy hurt American merchants and showed trade minus war risks. Medieval universities points instead to schools developed around theology, law, medicine, and scholastic debate. Constitutional Convention points instead to delegates created a stronger federal government with checks and balances, and Iconoclasm points instead to Byzantine disputes over religious images divided church and empire. Question 78. Quickly analyze which history answer fits. Reform-minded humanism spread in Northern Europe. Option A. Great Society. Option B. Russian Revolution. Option C. Townsend Acts. Option D. Northern Renaissance. The correct answer is option D. Northern Renaissance. This points to Northern Renaissance because it often emphasized Christian learning and social criticism. Great Society points instead to Lyndon Johnson's programs targeted poverty, education, healthcare, and civil rights. Russian Revolution points instead to revolution ended Tsarist rule and brought Bolsheviks to power, and Townsend Acts points instead to Parliament taxed imports such as glass, paper, and tea. Question 79. Inspect a clue and select the correct option. Citizenship and equal protection were written into the Constitution. Option A. Darwinism. Option B. Henry VIII. Option C. World War I alliances. Option D. 14th Amendment. The correct answer is option D. 14th Amendment. This points to 14th Amendment because the amendment became central to civil rights law. Darwinism points instead to evolution by natural selection challenged older views of life and nature. Henry VIII points instead to the English king broke with Rome and created the Church of England, and World War I alliances points instead to entangling alliances turned a regional crisis into a wider war. Question 80. Study in CLEP history most tested topics. Which answer fits this clue? Greek poems such as the Iliad and Odyssey preserved heroic ideals. Option A. Nullification crisis. Option B. Homeric epics. Option C. Martin Luther. Option D. Plato. The correct answer is option B. Homeric epics. This points to Homeric epics because the epics shaped Greek cultural identity. Nullification crisis points instead to South Carolina claimed it could reject federal tariffs. Martin Luther points instead to a monk challenged indulgences and helped launch the Protestant Reformation, and Plato points instead to a philosopher wrote dialogues and imagined rule by philosopher minus kings. Question 81. Master this CLEP clue by selecting the answer. Historical change is explained through production, trade, labor, and wealth. Option A. Sharecropping. Option B. English Civil War. Option C. Economic interpretation. Option D. Storming of the Bastille. The correct answer is option C. Economic interpretation. This points to economic interpretation because economic factors often shape political and social developments. Sharecropping points instead to freed people and poor whites farmed land for a share of the crop. English Civil War points instead to conflict between king and parliament challenged royal absolutism. And storming of the Bastille points instead to a Paris crowd attacked a royal prison in 1789. Question 82. Drill this history clue and pick the best match. Industrial jobs drew people into rapidly growing cities. Option A. Pax Romana. Option B. Montesquieu. Option C. Urbanization. Option D. War of 1812. The correct answer is option C. Urbanization. This points to urbanization because city growth created new social problems and opportunities. Pax Romana points instead to the Roman Empire experienced relative peace and prosperity. Montesquieu points instead to a philosopher advocated separation of powers, and War of 1812 points instead to conflict with Britain strengthened American nationalism despite mixed military results. Question 83. Speedily review and select the answer tied to this clue. U.S. victory added Western lands and reignited debate over slavery's expansion. Option A. Mexican minus American War. Option B. Korean War. Option C. New imperialism. Option D. Federalist Papers. The correct answer is option A. Mexican minus American War. This points to Mexican minus American War because the war ended with major territorial gains under the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Korean War points instead to a Cold War conflict began when North Korea invaded South Korea. New imperialism points instead to European states expanded control over Africa and Asia in the late 19th century, and Federalist Papers points instead to essays defended ratification of the Constitution and explained federal power. Question 84. Check which option fits this exam clue. The federal government assumed debts and supported a national bank. Option A, Red Scare. Option B, Copernicus. Option C, Hamilton's financial plan. Option D, common sense. The correct answer is option C, Hamilton's financial plan. This points to Hamilton's financial plan because the plan strengthened federal credit and promoted a more commercial economy. Red Scare points instead to fear of radicals, and communism led to raids and restrictions after World War I. Copernicus points instead to a heliocentric model placed the sun at the center of the solar system, and common sense points instead to Thomas Paine argued in plain language for independence from Britain. Question 85. Examine this clue and choose the correct answer. Rapid industrial growth could deepen inequality and political corruption. Option A, 17th Amendment. Option B, Copernicus. Option C, Embargo Act. Option D, Gilded Age. The correct answer is option D, Gilded Age. This points to Gilded Age because the term describes late 19th-century prosperity mixed with serious social problems. 17th Amendment points instead to senators became elected directly by voters. Copernicus points instead to a heliocentric model placed the sun at the center of the solar system. And Embargo Act points instead to Jefferson restricted foreign trade to pressure Britain and France. Question 86. Closely compare the choices and identify the correct match. Soviet rule featured collectivization, 5-year plans, and political terror. Option A, Stalin. Option B, New Deal. Option C, Diocletian. Option D, Constitutional Convention. The correct answer is option A, Stalin. This points to Stalin because his policies transformed the USSR at enormous human cost. New Deal points instead to Franklin Roosevelt's programs expanded federal relief, recovery, and reform. Diocletian points instead to a Roman emperor divided administration to manage imperial crisis, and Constitutional Convention points instead to delegates created a stronger federal government with checks and balances. Question 87. Reason through this clue and choose the answer. The Eastern Roman Empire preserved Roman law and Greek culture. Option A, Harlem Renaissance. Option B, Byzantine Empire. Option C, John Locke. Option D, Hamilton's financial plan. The correct answer is option B, Byzantine Empire. This points to Byzantine Empire because it continued Roman traditions long after the West fell. Harlem Renaissance points instead to African American writers, artists, and musicians flourished in the 1920s. John Locke points instead to a philosopher argued for natural rights and government by consent, and Hamilton's financial plan points instead to the federal government assumed debts and supported a national bank. Question 88. Sort the choices and pick the one. This clue describes the U.S. government forcibly relocated Japanese Americans during World War II. Option A, Japanese American internment. Option B, 30 Years' War. Option C, Peace of Augsburg. Option D, Glorious Revolution. The correct answer is option A, Japanese American internment. This points to Japanese American internment because the policy reflected wartime fear and racial prejudice. 30 Years' War points instead to a destructive European war mixed religious and political conflict. Peace of Augsburg points instead to German rulers could choose Lutheranism or Catholicism for their territories, and Glorious Revolution points instead to England replaced James II and strengthened parliamentary power. Question 89. Precisely identify which answer belongs with this clue. An American victory persuaded France to ally with the United States. Option A, Saratoga. Option B, Washington's neutrality policy. Option C, Stalin. Option D, Enlightenment. The correct answer is option A, Saratoga. This points to Saratoga because the battle became a diplomatic turning point in the revolution. Washington's neutrality policy points instead to the young United States avoided taking sides in European wars. Stalin points instead to Soviet rule featured collectivization, 5-year plans, and political terror, and Enlightenment points instead to thinkers emphasized reason, natural rights, and criticism of tradition. Question 90. Assuredly select the answer that matches this clue. A Renaissance writer analyzed political power in the prince. Option A, Peace of Augsburg. Option B, Investiture controversy. Option C, Machiavelli. Option D, Mussolini. The correct answer is option C, Machiavelli. This points to Machiavelli because his work separated politics from traditional moral advice. Peace of Augsburg points instead to German rulers could choose Lutheranism or Catholicism for their territories. Investiture controversy points instead to popes and emperors fought over appointing bishops, and Mussolini points instead to Italy's fascist leader built a dictatorship after World War I. Question 91. Mark the best response to this CLEP clue. Events are placed in correct time order. Option A, Missouri Compromise. Option B, American System. Option C, Militarism. Option D, Chronology. The correct answer is option D, Chronology. This points to chronology because chronology helps students recognize cause, sequence, and periodization. Missouri Compromise points instead to Congress balanced free and slave states while drawing a slavery line in the Louisiana Territory. American System points instead to Clep promoted tariffs, a national bank, and internal improvements, and militarism points instead to arms races and war planning contributed to tensions before World War I. Question 92. Pick the option that completes this history clue. European Christians launched military campaigns toward the Eastern Mediterranean. Option A, Weimar Republic. Option B, stagflation. Option C, Crusades. Option D, end of the Cold War. The correct answer is option C, Crusades. This points to Crusades because the Crusades increased contact and conflict between regions. Weimar Republic points instead to Germany's post-World War I democracy faced inflation, extremism, and legitimacy problems. Stagflation points instead to the 1970s saw high inflation combined with slow growth, and end of the Cold War points instead to Soviet collapse ended the decades-long US-Soviet rivalry. Question 93. Look in CLEP History Most Tested Topics, which answer fits this clue? Revivalism inspired reform movements, such as abolition and temperance? Option A, sharecropping. Option B, Second Great Awakening. Option C, 100 Years' War. Option D, Munich Conference. The correct answer is option B, Second Great Awakening. This points to Second Great Awakening because the movement connected religious energy with social reform. Sharecropping points instead to freed people and poor whites farmed land for a share of the crop. 100 Years' War points instead to a long conflict between England and France strengthened national identities, and Munich Conference points instead to European leaders allowed Hitler to take the Sudetenland in 1938. Question 94. Attentively study this clue and choose the correct match. Nazi leadership promoted dictatorship, expansionism, and racial ideology. Option A, Hitler. Option B, Stamp Act. Option C, Spanish-American War. Option D, Martin Luther. The correct answer is option A, Hitler. This points to Hitler because Hitler's rule led to World War II and the Holocaust. Stamp Act points instead to Parliament taxed printed materials and sparked colonial protests over representation. Spanish-American War points instead to the United States defeated Spain and emerged with overseas territories, and Martin Luther points instead to a monk challenged indulgences and helped launch the Protestant Reformation. Question 95. Instantly think through and identify the CLEP history answer. A document or artifact comes from the time being studied. Option A, Homeric epics. Option B, Peace of Westphalia. Option C, Stonewall Uprising. Option D, primary source. The correct answer is option D, primary source. This points to primary source because primary sources provide direct evidence from a historical period. Homeric epics points instead to Greek poems such as the Iliad and Odyssey preserved heroic ideals. Peace of Westphalia points instead to treaties helped establish state sovereignty after the 30 Years' War, and Stonewall Uprising points instead to resistance to a police raid helped energize the LGBTQ rights movement. Question 96. Recheck the clue and select the correct answer. Authoritarian nationalism rejected liberal democracy and communism. Option A, fascism. Option B, Trail of Tears. Option C, Embargo Act. Option D, Holocaust. The correct answer is option A, fascism. This points to fascism because fascist movements emphasized state power, hierarchy, and militarism. Trail of Tears points instead to Cherokee removal led to deadly forced migration westward. Embargo Act points instead to Jefferson restricted foreign trade to pressure Britain and France, and Holocaust points instead to Nazi Germany murdered 6 million Jews and millions of other victims. Question 97. Try this quick CLEP history clue. Women organized for voting rights and legal equality. Option A, women's suffrage. Option B, Byzantine Empire. Option C, Athenian democracy. Option D, feudalism. The correct answer is option A, women's suffrage. This points to women's suffrage because the movement challenged gender limits in political life. Byzantine Empire points instead to the Eastern Roman Empire preserved Roman law and Greek culture. Athenian democracy points instead to citizens participated directly in political decision-making, and feudalism points instead to land holding and personal loyalty structured medieval power. Question 98. Answer this history clue with the best option. A later interpretation explains or analyzes past events. Option A, secondary source. Option B, Boston Tea Party. Option C, Estates minus General. Option D, Hitler. The correct answer is option A, secondary source. This points to secondary source because secondary sources synthesize evidence after the fact. Boston Tea Party points instead to colonists protested the Tea Act by destroying tea in Boston Harbor. Estates minus General points instead to a French representative body met in 1789 during a fiscal crisis, and Hitler points instead to Nazi leadership promoted dictatorship, expansionism, and racial ideology. Question 99. Resolve which answer this clue is testing. Voting rights could not be denied based on race, color, or previous servitude. Option A, Romanticism. Option B, 15th Amendment. Option C, secession. Option D, abolitionism. The correct answer is option B, 15th Amendment. This points to 15th Amendment because the amendment aimed to protect black male suffrage during Reconstruction. Romanticism points instead to artists and writers emphasized emotion, nature, and individual expression. Secession points instead to Southern states left the Union after Lincoln's election, and abolitionism points instead to reformers demanded the end of slavery through moral and political arguments. Question 100. Unlock in CLEP history most tested topics. Which answer fits this clue? An abolitionist attack on Harper's Ferry frightened many Southerners. Option A, fascism. Option B, John Brown's raid. Option C, Socrates. Option D, Sherman Antitrust Act. The correct answer is option B, John Brown's raid. This points to John Brown's raid because the raid increased sectional fear before the Civil War. Fascism points instead to authoritarian nationalism rejected liberal democracy and communism. Socrates points instead to a philosopher questioned assumptions and emphasized ethical inquiry, and Sherman Antitrust Act points instead to Congress tried to curb monopolies and restraints of trade.